Hello, Stephen Mordew here, the social work shorts fella. I hope you're doing all right. Um, I've got this book, I mean, I have put one video up here about this, but it kind of didn't really focus on the content of the book. I don't think it did. I got myself into a Facebook thing, and here's the book, From the Edges of Practice: Proposing Slow Social Work. And I just wanted to talk to you about it. I just wanted to kind of to maybe get you to have a think about some of the ideas that I'm putting forward in this. And the ultimate goal is maybe to have some conversations about this with social workers and managers eventually. If it's worthy of a conversation, it's just some ideas that I had about how social work has been hijacked by neoliberalism. That's the overarching kind of thing, I suppose. It's not the fault of social workers, it's not the fault of social work managers. I feel that social work is as it is, and there's lots of good stuff about social work, but all the stuff we maybe don't like is because it's been imposed on us by structures in society. Let me explain. I suppose I'll tell you how I start the book and kind of what I kind of introduce to it, and you can see whether it's worthy of a quick purchase and a bit of a read and maybe a conversation. So I start with a little quote. Like they do in books, they put like something at the top of each chapter. So I've done that. Dead professional like. So the first thing I start with is and it's a proverb. It's out of the Bible. Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish. And one of the problems I think in social work is we struggle because of time constraints and the pressure of the role to pop our heads above the parapet and come up with a vision for social work. What should social work be like? And I think social work has emerged rather than it having any kind of clear vision. So that the vision is the ability to imagine something different, to think about what's really missing in the work we do. It is the way we do social work the way social work should be. And the clear thing is there will be things that social work is as we do it that we want to keep and have, but there's some stuff that maybe isn't. But I'm going off my kind of script. I'm going off my idea that I have, so I'm sticking to that. Back in the early 20th century, 1905, German sociologist called Max Weber, he gave us a warning of sorts. He talked about the future being shaped by efficiency, bureaucracy, and measurable outcomes. That's 120 years ago. All of it would narrow down the human experience. And he used this bleak image, not some poetic metaphor, although it is kind of poetic in a way, of the iron cage. So we'll be trapped in an iron cage. And he kind of meant that metaphorically and literally, I think. A world where values and meaning and connection are squeezed out by systems and policies and procedures. And worse still, he said, it wasn't going to be somebody else's cage where we're going to build the cage ourselves. I mean, I could go off at a tangent here about social media, about the cages we've built for ourselves to now inhabit. That's a whole other thing, isn't it? And I think if you're a social worker listening to this, you will be familiar when I say human connection squeezed out by systems, policies and procedures. I know this because a lot of what I've written here, and most of what I've written, as well as being rooted in theoretical ideas, is also rooted in conversations I have with social workers and lots of ASYEs around the place. And they step into practice and they see audit and they see performance indicators and they see compliance and they see things time-stamped, timescales. Whereas when they come into social work, it's a vocation rooted in caring for individuals, being curious about individuals, then being creative about solutions. So it's problematic there because social work is not reducible. I'd argue social work is not reducible to systems. Not good social work anyway. And we have systems and people do good social work in moments with people. I believe that. But social work seems to be pushed by the system. Is it the system that's creating the social work we do, or are social workers creating the system? And I'd argue we've allowed some of social work to be created by the system. You know, and I really think that I keep saying to people that social work is a political act. We're dealing with the most vulnerable people in society. We're dealing with the people that are squeezed at the margins. And I think because of that, I think we still have a capacity for resistance, that political urge. I think it still pulses beneath the surface, you know. So that's where this From the Edge of Practice, Propose and slow social work is kind of coming from. It's about acts of resistance. Where can we say social work needs to be slow to be effective? Where can we make it slow? We might not be able to make it slow in all the places. Obviously, if somebody is at serious risk, immediate risk, then we need to do something with that. Although social work is not an emergency service, I think we're in danger of making it into one, you know. But it's about resistance. It's about finding those places. So I began writing some essays. They ended up on my Substack. And when I was doing that, I wasn't really looking for a neat solution. I was just trying to kind of put some thoughts down. What did I think about various things I was reading in relation to social work? And it's interesting. Once you start writing, you start thinking, and once you start thinking, you start kind of thinking about solutions. I don't think we can help ourselves. It's human nature. You know, I've always said, though, that be part of a solution, not part of a problem. And there are some commentators out there, social work commentators, who enjoy being part of the problem. I think sometimes I'm definitely trying here to be part of a solution to the pressures in social work. You know, if you're playing cricket, don't moan about the playing field. Just go out and suss out whether the wicket is rough and uneven or rock hard and flat, and get on with the cricket. You know, even if you get some strange bounces. So yeah, it outlines the problem. But I think it starts to kind of head towards a solution. And here's the thing, I think we already know the solution. I think we've always known the solution. When you ask people what social work should or could be like, they always have an answer, they always know. But then they go, yeah, but you know, can't do that, can we? You know, we can't be that slow, we can't be that instinctive in our practice because we're worrying about other things, you know. So there's some ancient wisdom in this, there's some you know, custom and practice in this. You know, there are things like that we kind of draw on. I don't like terms like let's go back to traditional social work. I think we're such a young profession, I'm not even sure what that would be. You know what I mean? It's not like medicine that's been around centuries. You know, social work's a relatively new product in the shops, so to speak. So we've got difficult people working in difficult systems, trying to remain as human as possible within the process. Here's the tension I kept bumping into when I talk to people. Social work asks one thing of us. Social work is a value-driven profession, but the system asks another thing from us, and that creates a tension. We're told to be efficient when what the job demands is time spent with people. You know, we're told to be neutral, and I cover all these things in the book. We're told to be kind of neutral in a sense, the professional eye, when the job demands care and judgment, you know, and sometimes we can't be neutral in those things. And in some ways we're told to be visible. What are you doing? What's your action? Where are you at in this thing? When actually the most important work we often do goes kind of unseen, I suppose, you know. And I remember a social work colleague and friend of mine who says, nobody ever thanks you for what you've done for them as a social worker. I mean, happens occasionally, you know, but broadly speaking, nobody ever says, you know, thank you for that. And he says that's actually how it should be. We should be invisible in that sense, you know, that it's not about us. And on top of that, we're told that we have to simplify complexity. Systems and processes love things to be simplified. Is the person at risk or not? Will this service repair the problem, the issue, or will it not? Systems love that. Bureaucracy loves that, doesn't it? But real life is rarely that simple. And sometimes the honest answer to some of those questions, is this person at risk or not, is, well, both, maybe. Do you know? Maybe they are sometimes, maybe they're not at other times. And so sometimes it depends, and that's kind of where there's the critical thinking kind of comes in, isn't it? Not quick judgment, but the ability to hold on to both of those ideas. Is the person at risk? Yes, they are. No, they're not. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of social work kind of happens there, and you can talk a situation, can't you, into either of those answers, if you like. You know, depending on how you kind of view it, I suppose. So I've written about stuff like that, and I've written about speed and exhaustion, about emotional labour, that kind of thing. I kind of mentioned models and frameworks. I'm ambivalent about models and frameworks. I think they're helpful, sure. I think they are helpful. They help us direct our practice. But I think about these things like trauma-informed practice, strengths-based practice, relational practice, signs of safety. And when I look at them, I think, when you break them down, I think, well, that's all just good practice. Listening, understanding, connecting, caring, all of those things happen in all of those other places. We ask about people's history, we ask about the past, we ask about their aspirations, we ask about where they're at now, we ask about what they can do. We do all of those things. It's just good practice. And I think one of the searches for a model is because sometimes the simplicity of that it's about listening and connecting and caring and being compassionate. The simplicity of that is a bit uncomfortable, because it's like, no, we need a model. We need something really clever that says what we do. Well, no, we don't, because human contact isn't particularly clever. I think it's hard to do. I think it's hard to teach. But it's not particularly clever, Carl Jung, isn't it? One of my favourites, Carl Jung, know all the theories, but when you touch another human soul, I think it is, just be another human soul. I think that's how he puts it, So I think some of the ways that we go about this are difficult. So I hope that the book kind of offers some space to kind of think and kind of contemplate. And I'll just hint at the first essay in there, which is called The Accelerated Self. And I start with the quote, because we like a little quote at the start of every chapter, from Hartmut Rosa, who says, "We are not running out of time, we are being run by it." And that's really the paradox of our age. Everything's moving faster: technology, economy, social change. And yet many of us, including the people we work with, feel stuck, left behind. We feel fragmented, don't we? And Rosa calls this social acceleration. And it's why we always feel frayed at the edges all of the time, And there's a gap between the speed of the world and the speed of ourselves, or the speed we can comfortably operate at. The world demands us to work faster than we can comfortably work at. I said this jokingly to somebody last week in practice. They'd been on holiday, and I said jokingly to them, "Oh yeah, so you come in on Monday morning, and it's like, can I just check what we're doing this week?" And it resonated. I mean, it's a bit of a joke in a sense, because things don't change weekly, but the feeling was that it does. What are we doing this week? Are we doing it the same this week as we were doing it last week? And I think, we see that in government, in politics, we see it in the latest tech, don't we? We see that, we're not doing, no, have you got that phone? Well, have you not got this phone now? Have you seen that on Netflix? Have you not seen this on Netflix? So I think, it's a very real feeling that you take 2 weeks off work and you come back and you feel as though you need to check whether everything is still as it was, So we're on shifting sands, And this is neoliberalism at play, and one of the things with this is, in terms of identity, our identity seems to be conditional on lots of things. We have to change it, we have to move it, we have to create it, curate it, brand it, put it on social media. Here I am. And there's no final version of it. It's exhausting. We have to keep going, and it feels as though it's the same with social work. Now, it would be the same with social work, wouldn't it? Because social work exists in this world. So whatever's going on in the world, that's where social work will be pushed. And I think we need to politically push back against this as individuals outside of work and within social work. It comes as no surprise that in this world where not getting something right is seen as a personal weakness, not being as good as somebody else or something else is seen as like, well, why? You watch some of these programs on the telly, and Kirsty and Phil on location, or this one's where they go and buy houses abroad. Why have I not got a house abroad? Why can't I afford £750,000 to buy a house in the middle of the country? It's a neoliberal thing anyway. That's taken me off. That's taken me kind of off track a little bit. But the thing, so this is why I propose slow social work. And people will just say, and have said, there's just too much to do and there's not enough of us. And yeah, I mean, one great solution would be more social workers. And that's one part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle is to slow down our practice. Create space for depth. Create space for presence. I know these things happen sometimes, but I'm talking, this should be the norm, not the when we get a chance. So we slow down for presence, for reflective practice. Slow supervision down, so we create meaning in supervision. I'll maybe talk about that later on in another podcast, because I think about supervision in terms of Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory. So I'm just hinting at that, and I might talk about that further on. So it's countercultural. Social work, the way social work is, as I said earlier, is not the fault of social workers, it's not the fault of managers, but equally, and I put myself in this as well, equally we're allowing this to happen. And I think social work as a political profession needs to be countercultural. We need to say, no, we're not going along with that, because I suppose if you've got a medical problem, you want that fixed quickly. So sometimes the problem with medical problems is, though, they can't be fixed quickly. But you'd want a medical problem to be fixed as quickly as possible, and I suppose you'd want a social problem to be fixed as quickly as possible as well. But the problem with social problems about people where we're thinking in particular ways, or where we need to be motivated, where we need to kind of change ourselves, it takes time. So social work has to be slow, and the prevailing culture is fast. So we need to be the counter-cultural, political pushback to say, no, social work will not work like that. It won't work like that. So we need to hold space for the slow, the slow movement through somebody's life to help understand it. We need to hold on to things that are not yet resolved and accept that they might take time to resolve, and know that things maybe are still unseen and we don't know yet. So I want to imagine slow social work. What would that look like? Now, I would quite understand if you were saying, well, we can't achieve that yet. We can't achieve that at all. Be like, right, okay, but what would it look like? What would it look like? Let's start there, because it's that thing, isn't it? I can't remember who said it now. You cannot be what you cannot see. If we can't visualize what slow social work would be like, then we don't know what we're aiming for. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing. It's that change thing, isn't it? About just keep doing what you're doing, you'll get the same. But if you change what you're doing, or think about changing what you're doing, to use that motivational interviewing thing, if we move from sustained talk into change talk, and just talk about it, don't try to do anything just yet, but just talk about it, well, then we might start to think about how we could tweak things and change things, like I say, to reclaim that depth and presence. Slow ourselves down, because not all motion is growth, not all speed is growth, if you like, and not all stillness is stagnation. Being still and pausing and waiting is not necessarily a bad thing, but within this culture, the accelerator itself seems inevitable. And if we've constructed it, we can deconstruct it, I'd argue. So that's why I wrote the book, as one small attempt. It's only 92 pages long, and some of that's just, that's the further reading list and reflective questions and stuff in the stuff in the front. So it's just a small attempt to ask the question, what would social work be like if we slowed it down? Would it be more effective? And I don't care if the answer that we would ultimately come to as a profession is, well, it wouldn't be any better. I'm like, all right, okay, right, fair enough. But we've thought about it, because it's not about being right or wrong. It's about having a discussion and a debate and drawing some conclusions from that about the state of social work, where we're at, and where we might want it to go. So that's that. It's just a little starting point. But I'd really welcome some comments. I'd really welcome you to grab a copy. If you see me about, I've usually got copies in my bag if you're in the northeast of England. And yeah, I propose to you slow social work. What do you think?